Hi guys, welcome to Hello Mechanic. Today we're going to be talking about an engine bay cooling system we designed for the FF and the GTC for Lusso. We currently have units in stock for the FF. The GTC for Lusso, one of our adapters, is still being produced. It should be available in the next couple of weeks. We went ahead and tested this and had some incredible results. I want to share those with you today. So, Michael, why are we looking at engine bay cooling for the FF? Or the GTC Lusso, or any of the really front engine V12s that have the battery in the engine compartment? Well, anyone who's owned an FF or a GTC and has put high mileage on them know how quickly they go through batteries. A lot of people are replacing those batteries with lithium ion. I would highly recommend you do not do that. We'll make another video explaining why in the future, but basically, I have a client that puts on about 8,000 miles a year on his FF, and he's replacing the battery every 9 to 12 months. It's 9 to 12 months before he starts getting electrical system faults, and we replace the battery, and all those faults are resolved. Why is that? Well, inside the engine bay, which is where the battery is housed right next to the passenger side header, we're getting some pretty extreme temperatures. We're seeing over 300 degrees Fahrenheit, 320 degrees Fahrenheit on a regular basis, especially when you turn the car off. Now, this is way too high for a safely operating battery. We use Duracell as our replacement AGM batteries because of their 4-year warranty, one of the longest warranties, and because of their brand recognition. And right on the top of the battery, it says, do not heat to above 140 degrees Fahrenheit. And I know what a lot of you are thinking. Well, they're in those nice little heat blankets like this. Here's a couple of them that we have here. And this is supposed to protect the battery, right? Well, actually, this just protects the battery from radiant heat spikes. So if you have a heat source near the battery that spikes to a high temperature, then this would prevent the temperature from being directly transmitted to the battery. You would have to stay at that high temperature for a long time to heat the battery. Just imagine if you put your battery inside of one of these blankets and then put it inside the oven. How long will it take before the battery reaches the same temperature as the oven? It will reach an equilibrium temperature because there's no cooling being applied inside of this battery chamber. So this is only for radiant heat spikes, which makes sense, right? Because you're driving a Ferrari, so you would think that when you're at high RPM, high revs, driving hard, that's when you're getting a heat spike that you need to protect the battery. But hey, slow down and cool the car and the battery temperatures would drop, correct? That's actually not what we found in our testing. Now, we were moving the batteries to the trunk. What we decided to do instead was look at possibly cooling the entire engine bay, which would not just preserve the life of the battery, but also lengthen the amount of time you would have to go between valve cover gasket seal replacements, improve the performance of the engine, and lengthen the amount of time of all the rubber and electronic components in the engine bay. That's when we came up with this chilling system that is temperature controlled and cools the engine bay. So first of all, let's talk about what we saw when we tested the car without this system. We added a temperature sensor just below just literally on equal height with the passenger side throttle body, which is right there next to the battery compartment, and we drove the car. And we expected to see, high temps at hard driving, but that is actually not what we saw. When the car would start to warm up, very quickly you get to a 300-degree temperature in that engine bay right there, and that would, of course, continue to heat soak everything in the engine bay. Let's see, for how long are we going to be like this? You can watch it on the computer to see how long it is that we're up at these. We're literally double our our normal temperature right now. We're just sitting here and this is what happens when you're driving your car, you come to a red light, suddenly you're at 280 degrees Fahrenheit in your engine bay. Now, after the car reached its coolant temperature where the fans would turn on, the front engine fans on the radiator would turn on, we would see that temperature drop to sub 200 degree levels.
Finally, the coolant temp fans have come on. So, I mean, for how long were you sitting there just baking everything inside your engine bay? We're gonna go ahead and move now. Again, that was all just sitting still. Just watching temperatures go up. Now, our coolant temperature has gone up enough to turn on the front fan. So now we're gonna move again and watch that temperature will go down and that front fan will turn off and it won't cycle back on for some time. And that's what happens when you come to a stop and you've been driving, you come to a stop and boom, suddenly you're at 300 degrees. Okay, you move a little bit, you coast, the coolant temp goes down, then the next thing you know, you come to another stop and boom, you're at 300 degrees again. That is unacceptable.
A lot of heat is getting soaked onto your engine and into your valve cover gaskets and your throttle bodies. The whole intake manifold is heating up as a result of this oven that's created within the engine bay. Now, the reason that any sort of movement or acceleration of the car drops the temperatures, you'll see around the engine you have gaskets on all four sides that seal the engine bay to the hood, which creates a pressure zone. That's why when you accelerate and air starts moving in across the radiator into the engine bay, it kind of creates a positive pressure in the engine bay, which then forces air to exit wherever it can, through the side vents on the FF and GTC, or ideally through the bottom across the cats through the holes in the engine bay pan. So that's why as soon as you start moving, everything cools down. But when you stop the car, including, and this is extremely important, when you turn the car off. When you turn the car off, all air stops moving, and again, you're getting plus 300 degree Fahrenheit temperatures that the car is just soaking in.
Okay, and let's say you go turn your car off now. What happens to that temperature? This is your car when you just turned it off. So this car is going to sit here at 300 plus degrees Fahrenheit while you walk away and you're like, oh, I'm just going to let the car cool down. Are you letting it cool down? Are you letting your intake manifold cool down? The rubber intake boots, the rubber, the shock tops, you know, everything that turns brown on your car when you start seeing it get old. I mean, we're just seeing massive spikes in temperature. This is allowing your intake manifold, the metal in your intake manifold, to get hotter, increasing your overall intake manifold temperatures. So again, you think you're doing yourself a favor here, letting the car cool down, and we're still over 300 degrees. And it'll stay up here over 300 degrees for quite a bit of time because you have nothing cooling the engine bay, getting that heat out. It's just soaking everything up there. This is why your batteries go bad all the time.
Now, if you're at home, you could pop your engine bay hood and let it rest and cool, and I encourage you to do that. But if you're out at dinner or you're stopping at a car meet, you know, just sitting there with your hood open while you go shopping or go eat or go do your business is obviously not ideal. You want to keep your car locked and secured. So, but again, you're looking at 20 minutes of time of your engine bay being, you know, 300 plus degrees. So as a result of that, we developed this system, which utilizes brushless fans and those side scoops that you see just behind your front wheels on the side fenders of the car. We added these 200 plus CFM fans, one to each side. These adapters fit perfectly into that scoop that you have on the side. It comes out and goes to a reverse pipe that clears your fender liner here. We use a 2-ply high temp silicone ductwork to connect those together, and then another one to connect your engine bay cooling fan, and then this goes on to a 3-part splitter. We actually have a slightly different design that makes it a little bit easier for routing hoses now that go to 3 of these hoses on either side of the engine bay. Then we use adapters like or clamps like these here to hold the hoses in place. And we add a temperature sensor to the car so that when engine bays reach 200 degrees Fahrenheit, the fans turn on. Now, they are wired directly to the battery through two different controllers. One is a timer. When you turn your car off, it begins counting down, and we have it set between 20 and 40 minutes. You can change it from as low as 5 minutes to up to 2 hours to have the fans run so that when you come home or when you park your car at your restaurant and turn the car off, the fans will continue running, making sure that the engine bay temps stay below 200 degrees. Now, the way the fans are currently set up is the fans come on at 200 degrees and turn off at 150. So again, as you'll see in our video here with testing, when you come to a stop, engine bay temp reaches 200, fans turn on, engine bay temps are held below 200 degrees until you start moving again. Then the natural flow of air through the radiator into the engine compartment bring the temperatures much lower. The fans turn off. You drive around, no problems at all. You come to a stop, again, the engine bay fans come on as needed only. Now, when you come to a stop and you turn the car off, those fans will turn on and keep the car cool. However, because the fans don't turn off till 150, they can run for 45 minutes to an hour, which again could be a drain on your battery. And really our goal is to keep the temperatures below 200 degrees Fahrenheit, which happens in a shorter time. And for that reason, we have the timer. Now, all of this is wired directly to a post on your battery that is currently unused. So it's extremely easy to wire this in. You don't have to get a 12-volt supply from the ignition. The timer is set up so that once you see the voltage drop below an alternator charging level of 13 volts to a resting battery state, it begins timing. So you don't have to worry about someone pinning into a control module to try to draw ignition wire that could cause damage further on down the road. So it's a very simple system to use. Everything has been thought of. We use these rubber-lined clamps that isolate the noise, so very minimal noise. If you have your radio on, you won't hear it really at all. With the radio off, it sounds like your radiator fan turning on. We have clamps that are side specific that are designed to give plenty of support. This clamps to a factory mount. You just add riv nuts here on the bottom and top to bolt this in, and then you can add a rivet here to further support it. This holds your clamp for your fan, and then the fan is again noise isolated. The whole system I'm really happy with. It works really well. We have indentations on all of the adapters to show you how to align it to make it as easy as possible for you to install. And as far as like how this looks while it's in the car, you really can't see it with all the engine bay trim panels on. I'm going to go ahead and show you 2 photos here. This is the extent of what you can see. We route the hoses to 3 points on each header where there are holes in the heat shield. That way we get positive airflow down across those headers and keep the heat blowing out the bottom of the car and keep that heat from rising up and affecting all the temperature sensitive items that are above your valve cover gasket. All right, let's see what our temperatures do. Get up here to our 200 range. You'll see those fans will cut back on here. There they are. So just barely peaked 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Now let's see what happens as we drive the car. Again, low speed driving, cruising around. We'll do some high RPM stuff, but fans should turn off here. Got a super low temp. Once it settles down there, the fans will cut off. You can hear them on in the background. There they go, turned off. And we should be able to drive around here and keep those off. Look at that, temperature staying low, the fans stay off. Our temperatures are climbing up here. Once our cooling fan comes on,
probably won't need the fans on. Again, driving around, we don't really need the fans on, so they're not running. Again, staying nice and cool when you're driving, and no fans on. You don't need the fans. We're moving. We got airflow. We've got exhaust airflow. We got air flowing through the exhaust, not just sitting there and being stagnant, okay? And then when we come to a stop, let's go ahead and come to a stop and show you what we're talking about here. So obviously the temps climb up when we come to a stop. Let's go ahead and come to a stop, see what happens. Temperatures quickly start jumping up. Get to roughly that 200 degree mark. Fans come on. Immediately temperatures start dropping again. Let's watch it. Let's just go ahead and sit there and see where it settles down at, where are we staying at. Keeping it under 200 degrees, never going over it. We're continuing to drop. If you were to sit here and idle, of course, depending on the conditions outside, you're going to see the fans run as long as needed. So let's go ahead and take this back to the shop and see what happens when we turn the car off. Again, we start driving, air temperatures start dropping on their own. Fans decide, hey, guess what? We're no longer needed in this environment. And let's listen for them to turn off. There they go. They turned off. They're not needed when you're driving. Driving around, just amazing. 130 degrees, and we may mess with the temperature control a little bit more and get it to where, you know, it comes on earlier, but our goal is to keep it from going over 200 degrees Fahrenheit. There's no reason the engine bay should ever be getting to 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Here we are. We're going to come up to a stoplight again. Let's watch and see how the fan systems react. Temps just shooting up, immediately skyrocketing. And what happens when we get right to the cusp of 200 degrees? Fans come on, and we see temperatures plateau and drop again. Again, we got a lot of low numbers here. Super cool. We're protecting our engine bay. We're protecting our coolant system. You know, those hoses and clamps and plastic coolant cap, your oil cap, everything gets treated a lot nicer. You heard the fans just turn off there. Again, it's a low volume inside the cabin, really not noticeable. If you have your radio on, you won't hear it at all. But let's see what happens when we turn the car off, okay? Because this is a significant point, right? Is what happens when you turn the car off. Fans come back on. There we go, look at that. Bringing our temperatures down. Again, I'm talking normally, no loud volume here. Let's turn our car off. And you can hear them. Our temperature with the car off, what are we at? We're nice and cool. under 200 degrees. We're not at 300. We're talking about 133 degree difference, 130 degree difference just to 300. I think we saw 315 in there on that last drive. So major difference, major difference. And if we look under the car, all that temperature is coming out right here. You can feel the heat coming down off of those cats. It's just pushing that air out. And it's going to cool your engine bay for you. It's going to allow everything inside that engine bay to run cooler. So you can just walk away from the car and you're not worried about engine heat soak.